Is it done? Good. Then we can begin. Did we seriously not have countermeasures for this? No, I'm sorry. I would have thought that we'd be able to defend a city that's in the exact center of Equestria, give or take 50 feet. Ugh, interlock guards are so useless! I mean, I've never seen them win a fight. Greg, what's protocol for this? Wait, seriously? Safe House 17? Only that's the safe house with the coffee machine! Coffee is nice. Hello, my name is Hunter, the movie reviewing pony, because when it comes to cinema, humans cannot be trusted. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, has been on a gloriously horrifying downward spiral ever since Season 6. Some people may even argue that it started before that. And you know what? Those people may be right. Regardless of what side you're on, the undeniable fact still remains back in Season 3, Twialicorn divided the fandom. It happened again recently with the absolute asinine reformation of the Changelings. Remember when I said they were honest, hardworking equestrians and weren't doing anything wrong? I take all that back. They are dishonest and not hardworking, and they definitely entered this country illegally. Unfortunately, this hasn't stopped. The show has been dragging more and more attention towards Starlight Glimmer, which has been dragging the show down even more. Heil Hitler! And on top of all of this, Brony influence on the show's writing has been disastrous. The show's constant pandering to the fan base has been uncomfortable to say the least. Don't even get me started on Equestria Girls. Some of you may notice I never did review Legend of the Everfree. That's because I'm so sick and tired of Equestria Girls. I have a problem with the Equestria Girls. I have a problem with how it fits into the universe. And that's why the mirror was smashed. But also the problem of them wanting to do Equestria Girls rather than an actual pony movie. Which is why it was really relieving to see that Hasbro was in fact working on an actual pony movie that had actual ponies in it. Not only that, but also with the original writing staff for the show, a larger budget, a full nationwide theatrical release, total creative freedom, and no time constraints to get the damn thing done. Honestly, it's pretty uncommon to see all of these benefits piled up in one place like this. Also, it explains where the hell the writing staff has been while the show has been trying to destroy itself. For a lot of these reviews, Greg, yeah, I am. And to avoid delaying any longer, go ahead, My Little Pony the movie. Impress me.
I know the world can't get you down.
Well, right off the back, I'll say that Allspark Pictures isn't exactly a name I'd want on this movie, especially after that fine piece of work back in 2015.
I can't believe you've done this.
And from a personal standpoint, I'm not too crazy to see Lionsgate has a hand in this film either. If this is your first time watching the review after 2 weeks, now we know why. And one more name to throw into the mix there is Hasbro and their cancerous need to sell toys. But as I stated before, it's all not necessarily bad. The original writers are behind the movie. The main cast for the show is back and they're plenty talented. And DHX was heavily involved. Despite their recent blunders, they know what they're doing. And if you couple them in with the original writers, there's actually potential there. At the same time, My Little Pony doesn't really have the greatest track record when it comes to cinematic releases. Whether it's the fact that nothing can stop the smooze or a dragon abducts the star off the top of your tree because it doesn't have any friends. Yeah, Twinkle Wish Adventure was a really dumb movie. But in its defense, Generation 4 or 4.5 or whatever the hell generation we're on has actually been the high point of the My Little Pony franchise. Unlike its predecessors, it's easy on the eyes. Despite recent episodes, the show's writing can be really good at times. It's always attempting to give itself a darker side. And after 4 bouts of Equestria Girls, I'm really looking forward to an actual cinematic pony-related movie, with actual ponies instead of humans. I suppose the major question it really comes down to is this movie worth your time? Well, depends on your perspective. For someone unfamiliar with the franchise, this movie's a pile of garbage. But for someone who's looking to get into the franchise, or someone who's already into the franchise, this movie's fucking awesome. And for the purpose of this review, we'll be going off of the latter perspective. So this movie's fucking awesome! Considering where this movie is coming from, it could have been disastrous. But thankfully it wasn't. Even from a professional standpoint, I don't see why the critics are bashing it so hard. I mean, yeah, it's not an overly fantastic movie, but it's not as bad as people are making it out to be. Compared to the show, or Equestria Girls, this is actually an improvement. And I mean a really, really big improvement. And it's not just because this movie has airships, but believe me, that's a huge plus in my book because this movie has airships. I really like airships. I mean, honestly, they're the best way to travel. Oh, and travel they do. Really, all we see in this movie from the original show is Canterlot. We don't spend that much time there either. And that's a point worth noting, this movie does a decent job separating itself from the show. So much so, in fact, that this movie goes out of its way to establish new parts of this universe and avoid places the show has already been. Which is actually a really smart move, which is also coupled in with another really smart move, the animation style. Which, yes, this was a good decision. They went with a different art style in this movie, which separates it from its show counterpart even more. This is something that the Equestria Girls movies were lacking, and that just made them feel like longer episodes that didn't really add anything special. Then you look at this and you see a more accomplished staff and bigger budget. It actually feels like an old-fashioned animated movie that we haven't been getting too much of nowadays. In an industry that's now flooded with CGI and 3D animation, this movie actually had the audacity to create a 2D animation similar to old-fashioned Disney, which in turn can set it apart. And you know what? This visual style isn't half bad either. It kind of looks like fan art, but with a hint of Treasure Planet in there, maybe. Maybe even a little Titan AE. Either way, the visuals in this movie are very, very well done. It almost has a darker and grittier look from its show counterpart, which is a nice touch considering the somewhat darker tone in this compared to the show, especially given the new lore that it's laying down for the universe. Oh, and let me tell ya, this movie lays out a lot of lore. I can see the fanfics rolling in now. Sea ponies are canon now. Whatever the hell the sky pirates were are canon now. And hippogriffs are canon now. I have to wonder how Silver Quill feels now that he doesn't have to hide anymore. But this movie does expand a lot of the universe that we haven't seen before. And it seems to be going out of its way to go off on its own path. Starlight Glimmer isn't in this movie. There isn't a single hint of the changelings before or after the Reformation. Twilight's big, stupid castle isn't even seen. It's trying really hard to just go and do its own thing. Which, let's be honest, is something that a movie should do. We dished out $8 for this. We don't want to see more of the same. We want to see something new. And this movie delivers that. And these songs, oh, these songs. You cannot throw Sky Pirate music into your movie and expect me not to talk about it. Because it's great. It's fucking great. And I know I asked for a Generation 4 version of Call Upon the Sea Ponies, but at this point, I don't really care. The characters in this movie aren't half bad either, even if the new ones are a little bit underdeveloped. Or some of them extremely underdeveloped. But none of them were unlikable. Even the villain, who had a somewhat humorous tone put on him. And not just that either, the main fucking cast. Pinkie Pie is less annoying and Rarity feels more refined. They all feel like they were back in the first 2 seasons, which was the high point of the show. Even Spike, he who burned down my herb garden, they turned his ass into a flamethrower. Even then, his character's done way better than the show's been doing him recently. It's like the movie actually knew what to do with Spike. Even if some shots make it look like they pulled him out of the Dot Mauve series. Another thing, the whole main cast is prone to idiocy and making stupid mistakes, not just Pinkie, which is a good thing. We all do stupid things. When it was just Pinkie doing the stupid things, it was uncomfortable. They've distributed the stupidity amongst the cast equally. I know this doesn't sound like a good move, but don't worry, it is. And another thing I gotta praise this movie for, they weren't overly pandering to the fandom. I mean, sure, you've given us 10 billion opportunities to write fanfics, but the actual shoutouts, references, and fourth wall breaks are very, very just not there. Shut up, Greg! Another thing is, this movie can actually be funny at times. Like, ha-ha kind of funny. That's hard to do for me. Which means we can all laugh at this movie while acknowledging the fact that people actually died in it. Which is actually unexpectedly dark for the My Little Pony franchise. I mean, you cannot expect me to believe that everyone lived through this movie. But you know what? I gotta give it credit for that. There wasn't any befriending or reformation of the main villain. No, they fucking killed him. I feel we should let this sink in. Twilight Sparkle and her friends have killed someone. Oh, and without a Deus Ex Machina, that's another point in its favor. Alright, but what's wrong with this movie? Well, a lot. For starters, the visual style that they gave this movie is a point in its favor, but it hasn't really done it any favors in the frame rate department. For a lot of this movie, it looks really choppy, so they certainly don't get any points in the frame rate department. And another thing, the eyes are driving me crazy in this movie. I mean, look at my eyes, for example. I didn't mean that in like a sexual way, I meant like that in... You know what I meant. From a design standpoint, the eyes stand out a little too much compared to the rest of the pony, which doesn't really fit the simplistic style of them. And I mentioned underdeveloped characters. Yeah, that's a problem. A lot of these new characters are underdeveloped. And you know what? I'm done settling for the excuse that they sang a song together. It's not gonna cut it with me anymore. And that's another goddamn thing I'm tired of seeing in these Hasbro movies, is their overabundance of using songs for exposition. Now, yes, songs are a great means of exposition, but they're not goddamn miracle workers. Especially when you don't really use the songs to introduce the characters. Take the Rainbow Dash Pirate song, for example. You're asking an entire crew to give up their civilized cargo-faring ways and go back to a life of piracy, breaking the shackles of order and civilization because you sang a song together. Bringing forward a big, huge plot development like this is a bit more complicated than that. Now, going back to me saying that I don't see why the critics are bashing this too hard, if they're gonna bash on anything, they can bash on the plot of this movie. Because it's pretty goddamn generic. It's predictable, you know what's gonna happen. Well, at least for 95% of the movie. And yes, I'm saying that knowing full well that this movie is trying to try new things with the franchise. This isn't the movie's fault, it's Hollywood's fault. I don't want to pick on the movie because of this, but the plot is predictable, which is a shame, considering the show's been stuck in a rut. And also, a lot of the stuff in this movie is just underwhelming. Whether it be during the fight scenes or anything else for that matter, nothing in this movie never really stands out. The action scenes are underwhelming, and the musical numbers where they're trying to do big, huge song and dance routines aren't overly fantastic. And are you seriously telling me that the capital of Equestria is this fucking vulnerable to attack? With all the crap that we see in this movie, you cannot tell me that Equestria is lacking in a military. There's way too much in the world that can kill them. With those kinds of odds going against them, I think they would be able to defend a city in the exact center of their goddamn nation. Give or take 50 feet. Or, I don't know, maybe the fact that we have the God Council on our side should mean, I don't know, anything at this point. The amount of times that Equestria has been screwed over by one single entity is astounding, quite frankly. And it needs to stop. Now, granted, our evil entity this time around had an army at the helm, but it's no excuse. And to top it all off, there's a number of coincidental moments, which I'm calling them now, in this movie. And I'm about as sick of seeing them as you're sick of me talking about them, which hopefully is a lot. I weigh movies down a lot for these. But you know what? It's not a bad movie. It's not perfect, no movie is, and some people could even look at this as garbage. But you know what I see? I see effort. Compared to the actual show, I see actual effort and a return to form for the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic franchise, which the franchise is desperately needed because it's been straying off course. And you know what? I think this is the course correction that we needed. Now, normally I'd give something like this a 7.5, but under the circumstances and how refreshing this was compared to the show, my final verdict on this movie? An 8 out of 10. That's pretty high given the circumstances. This is an improvement over what we've been getting with the show. And not only that, this is everything that the franchise has needed. Regardless of what you may think, the show's been straying away from the main cast. And this movie brings the attention back to the main six, going back to the roots that made the show actually good. Going on fun adventures with Twilight and her 5 friends, and maybe Spike. And not just hanging around Ponyville either, actually going off and seeing new things. And that's what this movie does. And if they do something similar for a sequel movie or just another movie in general, it's fairly safe to say I'd be interested in that. Or hell, if the show followed in the footsteps of this movie, it would be an improvement. This was a step in the right direction, Hasbro. Keep following it. My advice? Check this movie out if you're into the show. Alternatively, if you're looking to get into the franchise, this might actually be a good entry point. And of course, it's a kids movie, and they'd enjoy it too. Its current low score on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes is certainly unjustified. So much to the point that I'd probably say that this movie's underrated. So definitely check it out if you can find it. Fizzle Pop Berry Twist. There's a name for ya. Don't worry, if you see the movie, you'll understand. My name is Hunter, and this has been a Hunter Review. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna drink some coffee while I wait for the ministry to formulate a plan to take back Canterlot. Shouldn't be too long.
There once was a guy who created a machine, a thing that would take people to and from some other world. And when he arrived, he had run into a pony who smiled and decided that they both should go see a film. When that movie sucked, they decided to join forces, and then they created a new show called Hunter Reviews.